A lot of us are in painful seasons right now. So let me jump right into the message and where I want us to focus today. This is obviously related to Easter weekend. And we're going to start in Luke chapter 23, verse 26. This is a small little piece of scripture as Jesus is being brought up to the cross, to the top of the mount. Luke chapter 23, verse 26. As the soldiers led him away, Jesus, they seized Simon from Cyrene, who was on his way in from the country, and put the cross on him and made him carry it behind Jesus. A large number of people followed him, including women who mourned and wailed for him. Jesus turned and said to them, "Daughters of Jerusalem, do not weep for me. Weep for yourselves and for your children. For the time will come when you will say, 'Blessed are the childless women, the women that never bore, and the breasts that never nursed.' Then they will say to the mountains, 'Fall on us,' and to the hills, 'Cover us.' For if people do these things when the tree is green, what will happen when it is dry?" It's a very interesting piece of scripture, and it's not one that you typically think about in the Easter context. This is really the last thing that Jesus says before he dies. Now on the cross, he shares a few more words, and I'm not going to preach that scripture this morning, but these are some of the last things that Jesus says. And I've got 3 lessons that I want us to take out of this. This is 3 lessons from Jesus' last message before the crucifixion. This is 3 lessons for how we need to live, what we need to take away from Christ, what it means to really follow him. So 3 lessons. Lesson number 1, be ready to serve. Verse 26. And as they led him away, they seized one Simon of Cyrene, who was coming in from the country, and laid on him the cross to carry it behind Jesus. Now, who is Simon? Simon from Cyrene, you don't know who he is, unless you look at some other pieces of scripture. His 2 sons, Alexander and Rufus, are mentioned in Mark. And in Romans chapter 9, it talks about Rufus, chosen by the Lord. And it also talks about how Rufus's mother in Acts was one of the women who cared for Paul. And so when you connect the dots here, you realize Simon wasn't just nobody. We don't know all of the pieces of the story, but if you line up the context, the way that it appears is that Simon was a Jewish man coming from a different place, coming in for the Passover, and just got seized in the moment. Hey, you're going to carry the cross for this guy. And what I would guess happens is that in carrying the cross, he spoke with Jesus' mother, one of the few people that's up at the top of the mountain with Christ. And from there developed a relationship with Mary and was brought into the fold with the other believers. Simon's sons, Alexander and Rufus, go on to become disciples. And again, Rufus is talked about in Romans as being chosen in the Lord. But I say that to say, the point here is be ready to serve. But Simon didn't volunteer for this. He was seized. This is very much like Luke chapter 9:23. Whoever wants to be my disciple must deny themselves and take up their cross daily and follow me. The truth is, Simon didn't volunteer, he was forced. But oftentimes following Christ means carrying a cross that you didn't choose. I asked a bunch of you guys, who here is in a season of pain? Raise your hands again. How many of you, just keep your hands up, if you did not choose the season of pain that you're in? Not very many hands going down. You didn't choose the season of pain that you're in. And we're talking about carrying your cross. A lot of people talk about, in this Christian language, I just got to carry my cross. A lot of people talk about that as, it can be downplayed as a statement. Sometimes the weight that you're carrying in life is the weight of your own poor choices, is the weight of some of your own stupidity. And I'm not talking down at you, I'm talking to myself too. We've all done stupid things and had to pay a price for it. That's not what carrying your cross looks like. Carrying your cross is things that you did not choose. Simon was here he was in Jerusalem for the Passover and just gets pulled out in a moment, says, hey, you're going to carry this guy's cross. I don't know how much that cross weighed, I bet it was pretty heavy, probably at least 100 pounds. And I don't know exactly what the march was from where he was all the way up to the top of the mountain, but I doubt it was short as well. Simon didn't choose this, but he got to carry this. And look what it did for his life. Look what it did for his family. His sons go on to be disciples underneath Paul. You're going to have things in your life that you did not choose. Simon was also carrying the cross. What I think one of the great lessons of Simon's life is that Simon carried the cross. Not one drop of Simon's sweat had any impact on my salvation or your salvation. I'm not saying that it did. But you know what Simon got to do? He got to play a part. He's remembered for forever. He's the last person who touched the cross before Jesus. He carried Jesus' cross up the mountain. He got to play a part in what has been so essential in every single one of our lives. And I think very much of what following Christ is very similar to Simon's situation. You know, I didn't ask for this. I didn't choose this. But I guess this is just the part that God's given me to play. And look what he did. He's in Scripture for forever, and he played it's a small piece, but it's a very significant piece. And for us, when we carry our cross, that's what you're going to do. You're going to carry a weight that you didn't deserve. You're going to carry a weight that you didn't ask for, and you may not even you're not the hero. Christ is the hero in every single story, right? We're not the hero in the story. But I think what's great is that God just like it says, he invites us to participate in his glory. God invites us to play our part, and you can play your part heroically. Right? There's a difference between being the hero, being the main. None of us are the main. We're not the main guy. But we get to play a part, and you can play your part heroically, and that's exactly what Simon did. And when you carry your cross, that's what you're doing. You're playing your part to open a door for somebody else. Simon could have said, this is what I didn't do anything. This isn't my fault. Make him carry it. I don't know if Simon actually knew who Jesus was. Obviously, he figured it out. But Simon was from Cyrene. It's nowhere close to Jerusalem. There's a good chance that Simon just got pulled in by some Roman soldiers and said, carry this dude's cross. Had no idea what he was doing. Some of us have been pulled into conflicts, and you're like, how is this in any way relevant to God's plan for my life? This is a bunch of crap. That's how you can feel about your situation. But this is the lesson of Simon's life, right? There's many things in your life you're not going to choose. How are you going to deal with it? What if Simon had rejected that moment? Probably would have been beat up or whipped or crucified himself by the Romans, so there's that part of it. But also if he had rejected it and even somehow gotten out of it, what if they just, he just ran away and nobody ever caught him? He would have missed his moment. And so this is one of the key pieces of this lesson. This is one of the key pieces of our lives in following Christ. We have to carry our cross. Right? That's what Jesus says, is Luke 9:23. Pick up your cross and follow me if you really want to be my disciple. And sometimes carrying your cross is loving other people, helping other people, solving problems, dealing with situations that you didn't cause. And you should take great encouragement in that. It's one thing to have to deal with your own stupidity. And I've done it before, and I didn't really feel good about fixing it. I was just like, man, I'm glad that's over. I hope I'm never that dumb again. But when you get the opportunity to carry a cross, it's like, man, I didn't cause this, but what greatness could come out of this? I hope that's what was in, I don't know, I hope that's what was in Simon's heart, that the weight of the Lord probably fell upon him as he's carrying the cross behind the Son of God, realizing, man, like this is going to do something for other people. If that's the attitude that you'll have and the pain that you're in and the difficulty that you're in, that's where you turn things that feel useless, things that feel meaningless, into a door that opens up destiny for other people's lives. And that's what God has called us to do, is to advance the kingdom, right? I'm not Christ, but I get to play a part. Jesus said, my kingdom's not of this world, my kingdom is within you. What I do is everywhere that I go, I get to carry a little piece of Christ with me. And when I get to talk to people, when I get to be around people who don't know Christ, all I'm thinking is, great, good thing I'm here. That's what my dad used to say to me when I would complain to him. I'd be like, man, this situation's stupid. These people are dumb. My teacher's an idiot. Whatever I would say. And he would just say, well, thank God you're there. Because obviously you're the one who knows what's right. You're the one who's going to fix it. And when you're in broken situations, when you're in painful situations, when you're submitted to leaders who are foolish, when you're submitted to leaders that are not submitted to Christ, that's what you should be thinking. This is my cross to bear. I am here to bring Christ into this situation. And I'm not the one who's going to save you, but let me introduce you to that person, right? That's what it means to be ready to serve. Let's go on. Before we go on, one other thought on that. You know, I don't hate very many things, but there's things that disturb me. One of the things that always gets under my skin just a little bit is when I hear people talking about what other people should do. And I'm not trying to be political, but these days it's pretty easy for things to be political. And there is a political party that likes to talk about what other people should be doing all the time. And I do not like the word should. Somebody should help them. Somebody should fix that. That's what normal people say. We're not at normal church. We're not living normal lives. Normal people say somebody should do something about that. But Christ followers, people who carry their crosses, say, I'm going to do something about that. One of the great life-isms that Pastor Keith teaches and that I picked up as a little boy is he would say, if it's going to be, it's up to me. Right? Well, not if it's going to be, somebody should do something. No, if it's going to be, it's up to me. And if you are in a situation in your life right now, and it's like, man, there's a lot of brokenness here. Somebody should do something. Here's your sign. This is your cue. That's you. You're the one who's there. Christ is in you, and you're the one who's going to fix that situation. Let's go on to point number 2. Right, so number 1 is be ready to serve. It's about having a spirit of willingness. Point number 2, fix your eyes. This is about attitude. This is about perspective. Starting at verse 27, we're back in Luke chapter 23. Verse 27. And there followed him a great multitude of the people and of women who were mourning and lamenting for him. But turning to them, Jesus said, Daughters of Jerusalem, do not weep for me, but weep for yourselves and for your children. I'm going to pause for a second. I want you to just picture in your mind, remember where Christ is at in this situation. He's already been up for days from the time that they pull him out of the garden to the trials, many accusations, brought in front of Pilate, back into Herod, shamed, back in front of Pilate, just being screamed at, ridiculed for days, then 40 lashes and being beaten, and he's walking up the hill to be crucified. I've seen what happens to most men when you put them through similar situations. But I want you to catch this, feel the gravity of the moment that we're in, and now this is what Jesus is saying. He turns to these women who are crying for him, lamenting for him, and he says, Daughters of Jerusalem, do not weep for me, but weep for yourselves and for your children. For behold, the days are coming when they will say, Blessed are the barren, and the wombs that never bore, and the breasts that never nursed. Then they will begin to say to the mountains, Fall on us, and to the hills, Cover us. Jesus rebukes the sympathy of the people mourning for him. And the reason he's doing that is because he's trying to help them understand. It's the whole reason Christ came here. I want you to understand. And he's rejecting their sympathy because he's saying, you think what's happening to me is bad? You think this is bad. That's why he's throwing it back at them. You really feel bad for my situation? He's saying, you should look at your own situation. The barrenness that he's talking about, this is a reference to judgment of God. The mountains falling down on the people, this is a reference to the judgment of God. Jesus is saying, don't be sad for my pain. Be sad for anyone who doesn't know me and who will be subject to the judgment of God. And what this is in this moment, this is great perspective. It's great power in what Jesus is doing. It refers back to our first point. All of us are maybe in a little bit of pain right now. Jesus is going through some of the worst pain, and he says to everyone, don't feel sorry for me. Why? Because he can look down the road. He can see destiny. He can see eternity. And he says, this is nothing. This is nothing. Because what God's allowing me to do in this moment is so much greater. He can see the weight of all eternity. He can see the weight of every person's soul before him and after him. And he's saying that in comparison to this is nothing. That, my pain in comparison to what you will experience if you don't follow me, if you experience the true judgment and wrath of God, now that's a terrible thing. And so really 2 lessons there is one, the great power of perspective. Jesus in his most difficult moment, the moment that caused him to sweat blood, the moment that caused him to do probably the most difficult thing he ever asked was to ask his Father, is there any way that you could pass this cup for me? Because what Jesus wanted more than anything was to glorify the Father. That's why it caused him to sweat blood, to have to ask his Father, Lord, is there any way that I could not do this? That's the pain that he was in. But in the same way, he looked at this most difficult pain and he said, you think this is bad? Think about the judgment that's coming for you. And so he used his pain as a witness. It's the power of perspective, and it's Hebrews chapter 12, verse 2. Fixing our eyes on Jesus, the pioneer and perfecter of our faith. For the joy set before him, he endured the cross, scorning its shame, and sat down at the right hand of the throne of God. Scorning its shame. Jesus could have looked at everything that he was going through as shame. You could look at some of the pain that you've been through, some of the trials that you've been through, and I'm not talking about the ones that you caused for yourself, but some of the cross that you've had to carry in your life, whatever it is. You could look at it as wrong, you could look at it as frustrating, you could look at it as shame. But the right perspective, is the Hebrews 12:2 perspective, is to look on. Look forward into eternity. Just like it talks about in Hebrews 11, all of the heroes of faith, they were looking at the promised land. They weren't looking at their feet. Jesus is not looking at his feet in this moment. He's looking all the way into eternity. And if you want to carry your cross well in life, you're going to have great perspective. You're going to have to see what's happening to you in a moment in the context of eternity. Because the reason that people quit is they get stuck right here. This is where people give up. They think, man, my situation is so bad. You got to pick your chin up and you got to look over the horizon. And you got to see, man, this is the great plan that God has for my life. And you know what? I'm in a terrible situation, but I don't have to do this for forever. I just got to do this for right now. And the reason I'm willing to do it for right now is because I see the meaning. I see what God's going to do in it. This is how you're going to carry your cross. You're not going to carry your cross on hype. You can get all excited beforehand, but when the moment is real, when the weight is on your back, when you're in the middle of the pain, the hype is gone. The only purpose of hype is to get you through the difficult part of the anticipation of the pain. As soon as the pain hits in your life, hype is worth nothing. All of your excitement is worth nothing. Then is the real test. Do you see the purpose? Because if you don't see the purpose in your pain, you'll give up on it. And that's what Jesus demonstrated in this moment, is the great power of perspective. He looked on into eternity, and he despised the shame of his own pain. He rejected it. He rejected the sympathy. He despised the shame. He said, there is great purpose and meaning in what I'm doing. Do not feel sorry for me. So lesson number 1, be ready to serve. Lesson number 2, fix your eyes. Fix your eyes is about attitude. It's about perspective. And lesson number 3, back in Luke chapter 23, last verse here, verse 31. For if they do these things when the wood is green, what will happen when it is dry? What Jesus is saying here, this is as most of the things that Jesus say, it's a multi-threaded reference all through Scripture. But Jesus is saying, if this punishment is happening to me in my perfection, if they're doing this to me in my innocence, how terrible will it be for those who are guilty? Right? He says, if they'll do this to me when the wood is green, what will happen when the wood is dry? The difference between the green wood and the dry wood, this is a reference to the vine, right? Jesus is the vine, God is the vine, and we're supposed to be connected to him. If you get cut off from the vine, if you cut down a perfectly good tree, well, after a few days, after a few weeks, that tree's not green anymore, it becomes dry. You cut a vine from the main vine, it's no longer green, now it becomes dry. And Jesus is saying, I'm the tree of life, I'm the green wood, and they're doing this to me. You think this is bad. What do you think is going to happen to those of you who are not connected to me? That's the reference to the green wood or to the dry wood. How terrible will it be for those who don't truly know the Father? And this is why Jesus looked at the cross as the joy set before him. It was his opportunity to show people, if I can go through this, right? If I can go through crucifixion, if I can carry all this weight because I'm connected to God, Jesus looked at the joy set before him. Because he saw the purpose that God had for him, and he was connected to the Father. This is what will allow you to walk out the plans and the destiny that God has for your life, which, unfortunately, for every single one of us, include plenty of affliction. If you want to make it through the affliction, I don't know if you've ever done this, you probably have, because we're all men in here, and men like fire. Not very many people like fire as much as Pastor Josh. Pastor Josh is a closet. There's people who are like, I enjoy fire, and then there's other people that it's like, we need to protect you from yourself. Like even growing, like I was the instigator. I was always the one like wanting to break stuff and do stuff, but like most people didn't think as a young person that I had much of a governor. But Josh had less of a governor than I did when it came to fire. I was like, that's probably good. We should probably not. And he's like, no, let's see what happens. Most of us have played with fire before. And if you put like really, really dry wood in the fire, it'll burn up very quickly. You put it in there for just a few seconds and you pull it back out of the fire, it's on fire. You take it, you go cut a brand new branch off of a tree and stick it in the fire. You can leave it there and the stuff on the outside is going to get singed and burn off and the leaves will fall off and the bark will start to crackle and you pull it back off and pull it back out of the fire and you can just dust the char off and it's the same. And that's exactly what it's supposed to be like in our life. You're going to go in the fire. There's no way around that. You're going to go in the fire. But what's going to happen to you when you do? If you're not connected to God, you can pretend. You can paint you can paint the brown leaves green and pretend you're a live tree. A lot of us try to do that. But when it goes in the fire, everybody's going to know. You're either connected to Him or you've been thinking it's all about you. If you think your life is about you, if you think your purpose is about you, we'll see. That's what Jesus is referring to. The multi-threaded part here is Scripture talks all about the testing. Now, the way that God leads us is an invitation. This is something that's been a little bit revelational to me lately, is that it is the way that God leads. It's the greatness of leadership. One of my favorite leadership quotes is Eisenhower said, "Leadership is getting people to do what you want, when you want them to do it, and they want to do it." And that's the magic of leadership, is that you can get people to want to do things. You cannot make anyone do anything, but great leadership is to be able to get people to want to do things. And one of the greatest compliments my wife has ever given me is she said, "You make it easy to follow you. You make doing the wrong thing seem stupid." Now, I've never called my wife stupid. Don't think that's what I'm saying. But she said, "You make doing the wrong thing seem stupid." And I've never tried to force Lindsay to do anything. I've just tried to lead her well. And like she said, you make the wrong thing seem dumb. And this is how God leads us. People who have a wrong view of God, they think, well, like Christianity is just like a list of don'ts, and it's the no fun club, right? Really, God's way is like, hey, I'm inviting you into like a greater life, because I don't know if you've enjoyed like slavery and pain and affliction and emptiness, but I'm just trying to like show you there is a better path here. It's with me, come to the real game. God's leadership is an invitation. Just like it says, Jesus stands at the door and knocks. Hey man, I got a better plan for your life. I'd like for you to join me. I'd like for you to come onto my team. There's more for you. The path that you're going down, that's not the road that you want to walk down. Reference to my favorite movie, you've been down that road before. It's an invitation. But I'm not talking about leadership today. The reason I'm just mentioning this part on invitation is because everything that God does in our life, it is leading to an invitation, but the invitation is a test of your preparation. If you understand how God works in a person's life and how people come to Christ, I'm not going to talk about predestination or doctrine-related things, but what God does before someone comes to Christ is their heart has to be prepared. You see, the heart is this place where God works in our life. The heart is this place where we like work and dwell with God. The flesh is not a place that you can get healed and there can be miracles, but the flesh isn't really a place where we experience God a lot. But what's cool here is in Exodus, where this is just a great example about the heart, and stay with me here. In Exodus, where Moses goes and speaks to Pharaoh, the first few times that Moses speaks to Pharaoh, it says that Pharaoh hardened his heart. The last time that Moses speaks to Pharaoh, it says that God hardened his heart. This is one of many examples in Scripture that shows that a heart is a place that both you influence and God influences. Right? And the point that I'm making here is that our whole life with God, whether it's salvation, which there's a preparation that leads into the invitation, or it's the greatness part of your life, the transformation, God wanting to do so much with you, there is an invitation that is going to be the test. You're going to go into the fire in your life, make no mistake. But who you are in the fire reveals what your preparation has been like. The salvation is not the fire test. If you're saved in this room, if you have a relationship with Christ, that's not the fire I'm talking about. I'm talking about the fire of you living up to the plans and the destiny that God has for your life. I want to get to the end of my life, and I want to hear, well done, good and faithful servant. I don't want to, I forget who Josh shouted at me if you remember, but there's a great preacher who talks about not being the guy who skates into heaven, ashy and covered in smoke. Like, you barely got in here, man. That's not who I want to be. I want to show up to heaven and we're like, man, great job. You did what we asked of you. It's a sense of duty. I hope you feel that in your, I do. I feel the weight of what God has done in my life. I feel Luke 12:48, to whom much is given, much is required. And maybe you don't think you've been given that much, but just the fact that you're in this room, I don't care what you've been through in your life. I don't care if you're 60 years old and you just got here and this stuff is all brand new to you and you think like, man, my life sucked before this. I'm telling you, the fact that you're in this room, it means God has a great plan for your life. This is not a normal room. I'm done. We'll wrap up, but there's 3 great lessons in this story. You've got to be ready to serve. That's about willingness. You've got to have the right heart. You've got to be willing to serve. And it's not serving, what willingness is not you choosing. In the military, a lot, I got what we called voluntold, right? I didn't volunteer. I got voluntold. It means one of my leaders says, hey, I volunteered you to do this. I was like, okay, roger that. I didn't get to choose it. That's the heart that you need to have. That's the attitude that you need to have. Point number 2, fix your eyes. Jesus demonstrates the power of perspective. Looks at the most terrible thing he went through and said, here's why it's small. It's the power that you have. Or you can perspective can also turn your tiny little molehill into a mountain. And we've all done it, and we've all watched other people in our lives do it. Like, man, why are you making these small things so hard? Right? When you have a God perspective, big things seem small. When you have a you perspective, little things seem big. I would much rather live in the God perspective and look at Mount Everest in my life and be like, I'm about to jump over that thing, right? That's what it's like when you have a God perspective. And the 3rd lesson is to be fireproof, right? Now, this comes from relationship with God. That's how you're going to be fireproof. But make no mistake, you will get tested. And some of you, the pain and the struggle that you're in right now in your life, it's a test of your relationship with God. Maybe you thought you were close to God, and you're like, why am I on fire right now? Why is my house burning down? Spiritually, hopefully not physically. If you're asking that question, that's a revelation for you of like, maybe I need to seek the Father better. Maybe I'm not as green as I thought I was. Maybe I got some branches in my life that need to be cut off. Right, so the scripture of this week is Luke chapter 9, verse 23. Whoever wants to be my disciple must deny themselves and take up their cross daily and follow me. It's what it means to be a disciple. We're not fair weather friends of Christ. We're not the people standing there watching. If you're one of Christ's disciples, you're right there with him. When I carry my cross, it gives no one salvation. That's not what I'm saying. I don't think I'm Christ. You shouldn't either. But when I carry my cross, I get to invite people and introduce people to who Christ is. I get to play my tiny little part. And that's what it means to be a mighty man. The question I want you to talk about in your groups today, because all of this, I talked about how it's a preparation for the fireproof test. And you know what will invite people into following Christ is when like you're hanging out with your friends and maybe you got some people in your business together, and then people start saying like, well, how'd you do that? How'd we go through the same fire and I lost everything and you didn't? When you live that way, that's what invites people into Christ. And so the question I want you to talk about in your groups is, where do I need to grow in my readiness? Where do I need to grow in my preparation to do the work of the Lord? The 3 lessons I talked about here, this is a lot of what the work of the Lord looks like. And ultimately, that's you being fireproof. So where do I need to grow in my fireproofness? Where do I need to grow in my eternal perspective in my life? Where do I need to grow in my readiness to serve?